All righty, and we are live. Awesome. And today we're talking about measuring happiness at work. We're talking about primarily how not to do it, actually, because I think the way a lot of companies do it now is actually wrong. And then we're also talking about a better way to do it, and we'll show you a very specific example and talk about some best practices there. My name is Alexander Kjolf. I'm the founder and chief happiness officer of Woohoo in Copenhagen. And we make people happy at work. And joining me in this webinar is Sasha Popovic, who is the founder of Vega IT in Serbia, in Novi Sad, and Milica, who's also from Vega IT. As we go along, you are more than welcome to ask us questions. You can ask questions in the chat. That requires you to log into YouTube, either with a Google account or similar. Ask us any questions there. Or if you can't do that, you can send your emails, send your questions in an email to webinar@heartcount.com. That's webinar@heartcount.com. Milica will see those questions and ask us later on. And we have a half an hour to get through this topic. We'll make it short and punchy and fast. And the structure is that I will talk a little bit about what is wrong with the current approach to measuring happiness at work. Then Sasha will talk about a better approach, and Sasha will give a specific example of how they've been doing that and the advantages that they've gotten out of it at Vega IT in Serbia. And then we'll see if we get any questions and answer any questions they have. This webinar is recorded, so if you can't watch it now or you want to watch it again later, we are going to send you a link to the finished video. So let's jump right into this with what I think is a really important question, which is, why should we even measure happiness at work? I think most companies do it. I'm not sure every company is very clear on why they do it. I think a lot of them just do it out of obligation. They feel like they should, or maybe employment laws in their country requires them to do it. Certainly in my country of Denmark, by law, a company is required to measure happiness at work among its employees. So I think you do it for 5 main reasons. First reason is to figure out what's wrong. And I think that's how a lot of companies approach it, right? Do our employees have any problems? Are there any teams or departments where they're especially unhappy? Is there, a certain problem area in an organization? Let's identify that and fix it. And I think that's a really good and valid approach. I mean, if there are problems in your workforce, you want to find them and you want to fix them. But some companies stop there. And use it only as a tool for fixing problems. And I think that's a mistake, because the second reason why you absolutely should measure happiness at work is to figure out what's working. What is going well in your organization? What is making your employees happy at work? What are the happiest teams in your organization, and what are they doing well that other teams could maybe learn from? I think in many organizations, that whole aspect is completely absent when they talk about measuring happiness at work. And certainly, I come into a lot of organizations to speak about happiness at work. And when they show me the results, they are very, very negatively focused. They are, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem, and very little focus on, so what is going well? What can we do more of? The third reason why I think it's really important to measure happiness at work is to show your employees that you care. I mean, why would you ask somebody how they're doing if you don't actually care about them? So asking that question, I think, shows employees that you care, with certain limitations, and we're going to talk about those. Fourth reason is to get, why it's important to measure happiness at work, is to get upper management more heavily involved in creating a happy workplace. Now, let's face it, a lot of top executives, top brass in the organization are very results oriented. They love numbers, and anything you can put a number to, they will value, and anything you can't put a number to, they will view with a certain amount of, doubt and suspicion. So if you can actually give them hard numbers on employee happiness, I think that's a really good thing, because that way it can get them more involved in the process. And once they are involved in the process, it has a much higher likelihood of actually succeeding. If you're trying to create a happier workplace and top leadership is not on board, that is going to be tough. So those reasons are good, but the fifth reason is, I think, is way more important, and that's the ultimate reason why you should measure happiness at work, and that is, of course, to guide and inspire action to create a better workplace. I mean, if you're only measuring happiness at work, but you're then not doing anything with the results, you're wasting your time. I actually think that worse than wasting your time, you're demoralizing your employees, because you're measuring happiness at work and then you're not doing anything about it. That just shows them that we're asking you questions, but we actually don't care how you feel. And I think the more times you do that, I think the worse it gets. You'll ask employees, you create an expectation that things will get better. If you don't act on that, it'll just get worse. They'll just get more demoralized. And I've seen that happen in a lot of organizations. And this is not just me saying it. I mean, I've got to be honest. The traditional approach to measuring happiness at work, I'm incredibly skeptical about it, and I've actually rarely seen it work very well. And this is not just me saying it. This is actually something we tested. So a few years ago, we did a survey of 200 employees around the world to ask them about their experiences with job satisfaction surveys. And yes, I fully appreciate the irony of doing a survey about surveys. But we were sort of curious, what are people's experiences and expectations and attitudes towards job satisfaction surveys. So I'm going to share my screen now so I can show you some of these results, because a lot of the results we got were actually quite depressing. So here's let me just show you this. We're right now creating an ebook on measuring happiness at work, and we'll include way more of these results in that ebook, so you can get a better sense of employees around the world and how they look at job satisfaction surveys. But here are 5 of the most depressing results from our survey, and these are from almost 200 employees all over the world from all kinds of workplaces. And so the first question you asked was, how was the experience of filling out your last staff satisfaction survey? And only 17.7% said that was a good experience. Over half said that it was neither a good nor a bad experience, and 14% actually said it was a bad experience. So being involved in this whole process for employees is just no fun. If it's no fun, how's it ever going to create good results and good data? I think that's part of the problem here, is that nobody actually enjoys this. Nobody goes, yes, the next job satisfaction is coming out, I can't wait. And I think this also affects the next question. So we asked people, how thorough were you when you filled out your last staff satisfaction survey, right? We want, if people are not actually reading the questions carefully and considering the different replies and being thorough and in their answers, I mean, how can you trust the results you get? And in that light, it's actually fairly depressing that only 44% said I considered each question carefully. 37% were somewhat thorough, but 14% were like, I just want to get this over with. They were just like clicking through so they could get back to their real work. That's not good. We asked how much time passed from you filled out the survey until you saw the finished results. And only 12.6% said saw the finished results in less than a month. And I what is up with that? We live in a time of instant gratification and IT systems. Why is it that you can't, the second you close the survey, you should be able to generate a report for the whole company and one for each department that was available to them instantly. Why can't they do that? That really worries me. I really wonder, why can't they do that? And 40%, 41.4% said it took 1 to 3 months, and for the rest, about a third, actually took more than 3 months before they even saw the results. And I've seen that in so many organizations. The staff satisfaction survey comes out in September. You have until October to fill it out. By the way, you get constant reminders and nagging from HR. We need more people to fill it out. Yada yada yada. And then, the deadline to take the survey is maybe October, and then you maybe see the results in February or March. Why on earth is that? And in my opinion, by then, those results are now way out of date. They're now completely irrelevant. It's just too late. Next, the next one. In your experience, did the result improve conditions in your workplace? 3%. 3% said we saw a large improvement as a result of the survey. 28.8% said they saw some improvement, and the rest either saw no improvement, and actually 7% said that things got worse as a result of the latest staff satisfaction survey. That can't possibly be good. We need a clear connection, a clear sense in employees' minds that things get better as a result of this. And here's the big one, I think, in my opinion. So given all of that, we ask these people, what is your expectation of your next staff satisfaction survey? I mean, it's coming, right? And 8% said it will definitely lead to improvements. Only 8%. An additional 32% said it may lead to improvements, and then about half said it probably won't, or it definitely won't lead to improvements. So people just don't trust this process. They have no expectation that this will actually get things done or improve conditions where they are. And given that perception, why on earth should employees even invest in that process and take the time to fill out the questions and carefully consider the results? So I think that is a real problem. So as I see it, there are 5 main problems with these surveys. And again, I'm just going to share my screen so you can actually see those in a list. Here we are, share screen. And you can see them here, top 5 problems. First of all, a lot of the surveys that I've seen measure satisfaction, not happiness. So a lot of the questions you'll see, and a lot of the questions you'll see are things like, are you satisfied with your salary? Are you satisfied with your working hours? Are you satisfied with conditions in your workplace? That kind of thing. And it's very much about satisfaction and much less about happiness. Now, it's important to define those two concepts. And the way we define it is that satisfaction is what you think about your job. It's a rational, logical evaluation of your job situation. Whereas happiness at work is what you feel about your job. Do you actually feel good day to day, most days at work? And very few questions in traditional job satisfactions actually get at that. Second problem I've seen is that they have too many questions and it's the wrong questions. I work with a client where their annual job satisfaction survey had 138 questions. I'm not even kidding. And some of the questions were completely irrelevant. Questions like, are you satisfied with the light at your workstation? Are you satisfied with the temperature at your workstation? So a lot of the time we're asking too many questions. I've seen many job satisfaction surveys with 50, 75 questions. It's just too many, and very few of those questions are actually relevant to people. Which brings me to the third problem, is that these are conducted too rarely. Annually is very typical. And I think that's just way too rare. If somebody has a problem now, if a team has a problem now or an individual has a problem now, you want to know now so you can act on it. And then as a corollary to that too much time passes before people see the results. I have no idea why that is so, but it just makes no sense. Problem number 4, we touched on it. These surveys create an expectation that things will change, but then nothing happens. And then problem number 5, the negative focus that in many organizations, these are only used as a springboard for talking about all the problems and frustrations and the negative. And I think we need to change that around so we also talk about the positive. So my suggestion for a better way is to flip this around completely and do the opposite of those 5 problems, right? So instead of satisfaction, let's measure happiness. Instead of asking a lot of questions, let's ask very few, very relevant questions. Let's ask them often. I think daily is too much. I think weekly is probably ideal. Let's take immediate action on the good and the bad, and then let's encourage a positive focus. So this is never only about fixing problems, but also about finding the things that work well in the organization and celebrating those and learning from those. So that would be my challenge to organizations. How could your organization measure happiness at work, not satisfaction, but happiness at work in a way that better lives up to these 5 points? And I think that would be way more valuable for both the organization and for the employees. And we have an example of that. So I'm now going to hand it over to Sasha Popovic, who is the founder of Vega IT in Serbia. Who first of all have a great culture already. They're an amazing workplace. I've been there a few times. They're fantastic. And I really admire the way they created such a happy culture in their organization. And not only that, they're also very successful and have been growing very, very quickly. And they found this challenge of how do we stay connected to each of our employees? How do we actually measure happiness at work? Given that, we're constantly growing, we're constantly changing, we're constantly adding new people, how do we stay in touch with our employees? So they cracked the code on how to do that. And now Sasha will give us an introduction and tell us a little bit about how they did it and what they got out of it. So take it away, Sasha.
Thank you, Alex. So yeah, it all started around 11 years ago when Vladan and me founded Vega IT. We basically wanted to create a company where we will be happy and have the best working conditions and be surrounded with people who are happy and who love the work they do and have great relationship with each others. And it was quite easy to do that in the beginning because there were only 2 people in the company, and later on, even when there were like 10, 20 or 30, it was still very easy because we were all in a same room, and you could always know how people feel and even know what's happening in their personal lives, so not only work lives. And then we could speak with our colleagues, see how we can help them, how to approach challenges, etc. But as we continue to grow, we felt that we are not at the same level as before when it comes to knowing how our colleagues feel. And we were experimenting with all different kind of approaches and tools. Alex mentioned many of them. So standard job satisfaction surveys, and we were trying to use them more frequently than once a year. But even if you do it quarterly, it's still not enough because people might already feel unhappy or unsatisfied at the time when you're asking questions, and the questions were more about satisfaction and rational things than how they really feel at work. So after basically probably at around the right time, I think we were at around 50 or 60 people back then when we were talking with Alex, and then started talking about how we can improve the things on our end, how we can sustain our growth and still have great culture and still know how people feel. And yeah, we had the approach that we would like to use, basically cover everything that Alex mentioned, do it more frequently, ask about happiness or how people feel, and so on. And then we figure out how to automate the process. And at that meeting, there were 3 of us who are all entrepreneurs. So we also decided we will make a product of it and commercialize it. And here we are 2 years later. So basically, we started 2 years ago, built the first version of the product around 6 months after we started, and then started testing it for a year and a half. We tested the product within Vega IT with around 200 people, and the results are great. So finally, when we were happy with the results and when we could say we are proud to put this on the market, we decided to show it to the rest of the world. And so it starts with a very short survey that people get every Friday morning at around 10 a.m. And so you have 3 short questions, 5 answers offered for each question, and people literally need less than 30 seconds to fill in the survey. So they look at the questions, choose answers, submit, and that's all. And then the tool itself will not really improve things at your organizations. It can't fix anything, and you need to do something about the result that you see. I will tell you about a few cases that left an impression on me. But yeah, there are so many different things that we are facing every week, and the tool is helping us with all different kind of situations. So one of them that I would mention the first, because it's very trivial and I would say unusual, and it doesn't cost you a thing to improve things dramatically, is the question that we ask from time to time, and it says, do you think that your team lead or any other person in the company care about you as a person? And I was surprised to see a few people who would say no to this question. And and then for the majority of them, I thought that they are really great people, not as professionals, not as people who are technically great in software development that we do at Vega IT, but really great people. And I was surprised that they didn't know that. And then I went to some of them and personally told them that I know that, for example, at least 2 or 3 people, and then I would name the other people and myself think great about them as people. And to some of them, I wrote an email. My colleagues from people operations team also did that in some cases because we wanted that to be very personal and very sincere, so not something fake or anything similar. And it really didn't cost us a thing, and you could see great improvement in how people felt and what the results were after that.
So just to be clear, Sasha, one of the differences between Heartcount and a lot of other tools is that in this case, you can actually see what people respond. It's not anonymous, and this is what actually allows you to go in and directly fix a problem with a given employee if they indicate that there's something that they're not happy with, something that's not working, if they have a specific problem.
Yeah, that's true. That's the main difference compared to other tools, and that might have effect on the number of responses that you get, depending on what your culture is like at the moment, etc. But still, even if you get less answers than with standard job satisfaction surveys, even if I would get answers from only 20% of my colleagues, it would be very valuable, and I would be able to make very specific improvements for those 20% of our colleagues. And we would still do those standard job satisfaction surveys and do whatever is possible with the results of those, but we will still get great value from those that do it non-anonymously. And then there were, this one, I wrote it down, another example, a question saying, does your team lead praise you for job well done? And then I was surprised to see some of the answers where people would say no, or they do it rarely, etc. And then when I spoke with a few of my colleagues who are team leaders, I would hear answers like, yes, but she didn't do a great job. And then that's repeating week after week. And then we tried to still praise our colleagues for job good, well done, not great, but well, or even when they would do like 30% of the work great and the rest solid, praising them for what they did good gave them more motivation, made them feel better, showed them that we look at what they do, we care, we want them to be better at work. We're not punishing them or anything like that. So it was not that easy with some of my colleagues who are team leaders, because they would like to praise someone when they did great work. So you need a bit of mindset shifting, changing. But the results are great when you start practicing something like that.
And again, I think that this shows the value of actually measuring these things, because you can go to a team lead like that and say, here are the numbers. 45% of your employees don't actually feel like they're being praised for the good work they do. Maybe there's something here in your behavior that you can change.
Yeah, true. What I also find interesting with Heartcount is that very often people use it as a way to say how they feel, even though we didn't ask the right questions. And even though we are a very open and transparent organization, there's no fear, we are a flat organization, anyone can approach anyone, and then it still happens that people that I speak with on a daily basis, meet them in in our canteen or anywhere else would not say how they feel, but when we ask the questions on Friday morning, they would basically show us that they don't feel well. And for example, we ask a question, have you learned something new this week? And then someone would say no, even though we knew that that person learned something new that week. And then we would go and speak with that colleague and figure out that there was something else that made them feel unhappy that week. But we didn't have that questions, a very specific question that they could answer. So they just put no on that question regarding learning something new, just to express how they felt. Sometimes when you say I haven't learned something new this week, it might mean that you just didn't learn something new that week, and that's completely fine. And we are not going to waste time of our colleagues and ask them too often about the answers they provide, etc. So you need to put some thinking into that as well. Or there are also cases where people give answers and then stop answering for a few weeks, or usually when they stop for at least 2 or 3 weeks, we would go and speak with them. Sometimes there are just reasons, good reasons for why they stopped, not related to how they feel at work, but very often it happens that they don't feel well at work and they choose to stop answering. And so not getting any answers can also be helpful with Heartcount.
That's awesome. Just out of curiosity, what is the response rate right now in across Vega?
At the moment, we have more than 80% of people who answer the surveys. On a weekly basis, it's something less. It's something between 60 and 70%, because people would be at vacation or traveling somewhere abroad to the client or something like that. So in average, it's between 60 and 70%. But what's interesting is that when we started a year and a half ago, in the beginning, our response rate was at around 20%. So even though we are a freedom-centric organization, etc., people still needed some time to see that nothing bad is going to happen if they say how they feel. But you can always speed up the things by showing that nothing bad happens, but also showing good examples, like showing that someone reported through Heartcount that they didn't feel well about something, and then we acted on that, and as a consequence, that person became better in something or felt better because something happened or something like that. So it's not that nothing bad happened, but in contrary, something great happened for that person.
And that's what people at Vega have now understood, that these answers are being taken seriously. And if I complain about something, it'll be fixed.
Yes.
It'll be addressed.
Or at least addressed, because sometimes it's not something that we can change, or at least not in some short time, but we would at least speak with our colleagues and explain why. And in many cases, that's enough. In many cases, it's enough just to show that we care and that we really look at what they are answering there. There's an interesting one that I like very much. One of the questions says like this: it would be hard for me to leave this company even if I were given an offer that I couldn't refuse. And then it's interesting because after we had that question for the first time, we received a few emails from our colleagues saying that they can't answer that one because they're not even thinking about that and they don't want to think about that. And then we spoke with them to understand why they feel so great about working with us and what we can use from that to make some other teams happier or some other people happier. We also do that by looking at people who provide positive answers on a very regular basis. Sometimes it might be that someone is not entirely sincere with their answers, but yeah, in many cases, people really feel happy at work, and then we learn from from them, and it might be that the team leader is doing something great and the team feels great about that, or it might be that they have a very good client, or that they just approach challenges in a different way, and so on. So you can really learn from that as well.
And that goes back to the positive focus that we talked about earlier. It's not only about fixing problems, it's also about figuring out what works so we can do more of that. So you've been using this for a year and a half now and have great experiences with it. It's helped you make the company even better, even if the company has grown to almost 200 people now. It also helps you to retain employees in a really tough job market. There are a lot of other IT companies in Serbia that are trying to pilfer your best employees, and you still you still keep them in your company, and it's hard for them to leave, which is fantastic. So based on these best experiences, we have now made Heartcount available as a tool that other companies can use. And could you talk a little bit about how it works, where people can learn more and how they get access to it?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you go to heartcount.com, you can see a short video of it, and you can easily reach us. Basically, after this webinar, in coming days, our colleague Milica will send an email to everyone who participated with more information about the tool. We also have a special discount for everyone who participated. So that's a 20% discount for the first 6 months. One thing that's also interesting that makes us different from other similar tools is that basically you're paying only for people who use the product. So let's say you have 1,000 employees in your company, and only 200 of them are using Heartcount this month. Then you're paying only for those 200 people, because we don't want the whole system to be unfair. If you're don't getting value from some of your employees because they're not using the tool, then we don't ask you to pay for that. Yeah, and I mentioned how it works. So basically, every Friday morning, you receive a very short survey, and then people that are allowed to see non-anonymous answers would be able to look into that and act on the results. And I will just repeat it once again. Alex mentioned that in his introduction. The tool itself is not useful if you don't use the results that you're getting through it, but it can even give negative results if you don't act on that. So in the best case, people will just stop answering, but it can also happen that they feel that you don't care. If they're providing answers and you're not acting on that, then they might feel that you don't care.
Exactly. So without having to plug Heartcount specifically, I think the principles here are valid. Ask a few questions, ask relevant questions, ask them often, highlight the problems and the good sides, and for God's sake, act on what you find. If you're not going to act on it, don't even bother asking. That just makes things worse. Let's wrap this up. Let me check in with Milica. Did we get any questions? Anything people wanted to know in the chat or on email?
Yes, actually we did, although to some of them you already answered, but let's go like this. Florian asked, is it like a retrospective in Scrum?
What do you think, Sasha?
No, well, not really. I mean, we're basically asking people how they feel. So I gave you a few examples of the questions we ask, and it's not really that much about things you think about on a rational level. It's more about how you feel about your colleagues, your superiors, your clients, about things that you've learned or not, whether you're doing the work you're best at, and things like that.
And then we have Veronica asked, what if there is a fear and you want to start with this approach? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about our approach.
Yeah. So as I mentioned already, when we started, even though there was no real fear, or at least that's what we felt, we had only around 20% of our colleagues to answer the surveys. And then it took us some time for people to see that nothing bad happens when they say honestly how they feel, what they think. And then when we added to that some good examples, then we got to this growth of 80%. So I would say that if there's fear, then you probably will have lower response rate. You can work on that by showing that nothing bad happens. Try to encourage your colleagues. Maybe try with a smaller team. So if you have, for example, 1,000 employees, try with 50, and then show that nothing bad happened to those 50 people who are using it for like 2-3 months, and then try to encourage the others that way to start using it.
And I might add to that if you are in a toxic workplace where honest opinions are punished, this is not the tool for you.
Yeah.
Then you have other problems that you need to fix first.
Then we have a couple of more questions. Frank asked, and he said that actually he liked Vega approach very much, but what about the GDPR? Is the survey based upon an opt-in?
Yeah, so it is full GDPR compliant. You can easily opt out. You can delete all your data and so on. So basically, it is fully GDPR compliant.
That's great. And Lucas also asked, how often do you change the set of questions? As an employee, do I get different questions every week?
Yeah, so we have a pool of questions and we rotate them. And not all of the questions will appear as often as the other ones. So, for example, if you're asking people whether they would choose to work for the same company if they would be able to get back to in the past, then that's not something that we would ask very often. But if we are asking about question about whether you were praised for the great work you did this week, then that's something that would appear more often. But at the moment, there are 43 questions, and we are rotating those based on different criteria.
So every week the questions are new, which also helps keep it fresh for employees. They're not just clicking through the same questions again and again and again. It's a new experience every time you get the survey. Any other questions that came in?
Not for now.
Excellent.
Actually, sorry, I see one. Someone is asking if there will be Heartcount in Italian. We can easily do that. So just speak with us and we will prepare it in Italian.
It's currently available in English and Serbian, but it can be translated into any language that there's an interest in. Excellent. Well, thank you, Milica and Sasha, for being part of this. Thank you to everybody who's been watching, and thanks for the great questions. I'll just end on one note, which is the name Heartcount, because I came up with that, and I'm a little proud of it. And the story behind the name is that, of course, every organization knows its head count, right? Your head count, how many people are in your organization. But have you ever wondered where that term comes from? Why do we even talk about an organization's head count? Do you know where that comes from? Cattle, cows, American cattle farmers, when they talk about how many cows they own, that's how many heads of cattle they own. That's their head count, okay? And that term that was originally used for cattle, we now use it for people. And I'm not a fan of that term. So the way we define it is that the head count is how many people you have in your organization, and your heart count is how many of them actually like to be there, actually want to be there. And I think that the closer you can get your heart count to your head count, the more effective your organization will be. We know that happy companies make more money. And I honestly believe that the heart count has tremendous potential. It is different from any other tool out there for measuring happiness at work, in that it allows you to measure it faster, more accurately, more relevantly, and take more specific action on whatever answers you get than any other tool available out there. So I hope you found this interesting, whether or not you're going to use Heartcount. In any case, I really urge you to find a way to measure happiness at work in your organization that is different and better than the traditional job satisfaction approach of just spamming people with the 75 questions once a year. So I really hope this has been inspiring. and stay happy. Thank you for joining us.